In a different version of Earth, way back in the early 2000s, they found out that about 4% of people had special powers. The government called them powers and wanted them to register so they could keep an eye on them. At first, these powers were really wanted in jobs, but things changed. After the Third Industrial Revolution, suddenly, all powers ended up poor and getting hassled by the cops. Then, this shady gang started selling a drug called psych, made from spinal fluid taken from kidnapped powers. To tackle this, the cops sent out big drones and robots called Guardians to hunt them down. Among them was Connor, a guy who could control electricity. He was doing temporary work on construction sites while looking for a steady job. One day, when Connor was on a construction gig, the cops showed up to check if any powers were working there. They made everyone line up and stare at the sky while drones scanned them to see who had powers. Those powers without permits were told to scram. During this check, they found a warrant for one of the workers. When they tried to arrest him, he fought back by shooting fire to escape. The drones then sent out Guardians, and the guy got shot dead. Meanwhile, another team of cops busted into the apartment of another power. When a Guardian broke in, the occupant, who was super strong, took it down by throwing something sharp, cutting its connection. Then he tried to run out the window but got stopped by Officer Park at gunpoint. They found a room in the apartment where powers were being held captive and drained of their spinal fluid. They also found a bunch of bags of psych, which tied the whole thing to a big-shot criminal named Marcus. Later, Connor goes to see his mom, Mary, at the grocery store where she works. Mary's got a brain tumor, and sometimes she can't control her ability to mess with temperatures. One time, she accidentally breaks a sauce bottle, and her boss gets all mad at her. Connor steps up to defend her, almost using his own power, but they both end up getting kicked out of the store by the boss. Back home, Connor tries to convince Mary to start chemotherapy, but she reminds him they don't have much money. The following day, Connor catches sight of a Lincoln Power truck, prompting his friend to caution him about its ties to Marcus's gang. But Connor, desperate for cash, agrees to work for Garrett, the driver. Garrett wants him to use his electric power for a job. So, they head to a chemical plant, where Garrett tells Connor to shut down an electric fence. At first, Connor tries to cut the fence with bolt cutters, but he gets zapped. Still, he doesn't give up and uses his power to overload the fence instead. Later on, Maddie uses her fire powers to melt the lock, letting the group inside. As they start loading the barrels onto the truck, their efforts are disrupted by a guard attempting to summon reinforcements. Garrett, using his telekinetic power, grabs the guard's radio and makes him surrender, making sure he didn't see anything. But even with their efforts, a police alert goes off as they leave. Now, all patrol cops are on the lookout for a red van. Under a bridge, Garrett stops the van, and they swap the red covering for a white one, fooling a police drone that ignores them because of the new color. They head to a garage where Rhino leads them through a hidden passage into a club. In the club, crime boss Marcus gets chewed out by Wesley for not paying up. Marcus tries to explain, but Wesley wants him to read Copperhead's mind to learn some dangerous stuff he knows. With a week's deadline from Wesley, Marcus leaves. Garrett then introduces Connor to Marcus, who reads Connor's mind and agrees he should join their crew. As Nia shows Connor around, Marcus talks to Garrett about money problems, saying they have to pay Wesley before they can buy chemicals. Marcus asks about Connor's powers, but Garrett says he needs more training. Marcus tells Garrett to get Connor ready for their next job. While investigating the robbery, officers Park and Davis unravel the mystery, realizing that the stolen chemicals were intended to weaken Marcus's psyche. They find evidence of electric and fire powers used on the door, making a list of people who might have those abilities. The next day, Connor decides to join Garrett instead of going back to construction work. Garrett wants to see what Connor can do, so he challenges him to turn off a car alarm set off by his strong hit. Connor concentrates and manages to turn it off, impressing Garrett enough to start training sessions. They begin with simple tasks like lighting a bulb, but Connor keeps breaking them because he can't control his power well. He keeps trying until he gets it right. As time goes on, Garrett gives him jobs like collecting money from dealers, using his powers to make them obey or fight back. Connor practices a lot in his free time and gets good enough to light up multiple bulbs at once. When he faces a dealer's tough electric bodyguard, Connor takes the hit and beats him, feeling more confident. Feeling brave, Connor stands up to his mom's boss, making him treat Mary better. When he gets home, Connor tells Mary he's got a steady job now, but what he doesn't know is that officers Park and Davis are watching him, thinking he might be involved in crime. The next day, Connor and Garrett check out a bank, planning to rob it in a 5-minute window before police drones show up in 7. Meanwhile, Mary notices her boss acting nicer at work. Later, Garrett's crew storms the bank, knocking out guards and holding people at gunpoint. Connor heads for the vault, turning off its remote lock. Even though they set off an alarm, they find most of the money gone when they open the vault. They grab what's left and run outside where drones and guardians are waiting. Connor uses his powers to shut them down, helping them escape. When they meet Marcus, things get tense because they didn't get all the money. During the argument, Copperhead tries to kill someone, but Connor stops him and saves Nia. After the chaos, Connor finds out Nia is addicted to psych and got hurt in the fight. Nia heals Connor's wounds and tells him she works for Marcus because of a debt. Back home, Mary finds Connor's hidden money stash, but then she collapses because her health is getting worse. With medical bills they can't afford, Connor gets questioned by officers Park and Davis. Connor denies being involved in any crimes, but they try to pressure him by offering help for Mary if he talks about Marcus. Connor refuses and gets let go because they don't have enough proof. Garrett picks him up and takes him to Marcus, who reads Connor's mind and believes he's loyal. In a smart move, Connor suggests a deal to Marcus. He'll help get the planned psych shipment if Marcus lets Nia go. Garrett, aiming for a better position, also negotiates to be more than just a crew member, but a partner, and Marcus agrees. With the plan set, the gang sets up roadblocks to stop the armored van carrying the psych. As the van gets closer, followed by drones that have to pull back when they hit a no-fly zone, Maddie and Freddie tail it in their car. Garrett gets a garbage truck ready to block its path. When the driver protests, Garrett stalls while Connor powers up for an electric blast, taking out the Guardians with the van. Using telekinesis, Garrett holds the Guardians while Connor messes with their circuits. Freddie and Maddie jump in, making the Guardians useless. Maddie breaks into the van, using tear gas to force out the officers. With the van stopped, the drones break the no-fly rule. Rhino's guys grab the psych, but things turn violent, and Maddie gets killed. Garrett saves Freddie, using telekinesis as things get worse. With Rhino taking off with the psych, his guys turn on Garrett's group. More Guardians show up, making the gangsters get ready to fight. Garrett, Freddie, and Connor take the chance to escape. In the fight, Rhino's guys can't do much against the Guardians and get taken out quickly. As they run, Freddie gets hit by a stray bullet, and Garrett carries him to the car. Connor blames Garrett for Freddie's death, saying he pushed Marcus too far with his demands. Meanwhile, Rhino gives the psych to Marcus, who won't let Nia go because of debts her dad owes. Later, Connor promises his mom he'll get her treatment, but she tells him to move on. Connor meets Park at a diner, offering to surrender if they catch Marcus. At a bar, Marcus gets sick, so Nia tries to help him. But then the cops attack, making Marcus, Nia, and Rhino run through a secret passage. Garrett ends up killing Marcus when they meet, and Rhino tries to fight back, but gets disarmed by Garrett. Bullets don't work on Rhino, so Garrett slows him down with telekinesis. Connor shows up and tries to help with an electric blast, but gets overpowered by Rhino. Desperate, Connor puts all his energy into an attack, but it's not enough. Rhino starts choking him, but Garrett steps in, blinding Rhino and giving Connor the chance to shock him to death, ending the fight. Meanwhile, Marcus threatens Nia, but she grabs his weapon. Garrett uses his powers to kill Marcus, then hands the gun to Connor. With everything settling down, Garrett tells Connor to take what he wants. But then Nia tells Connor that she's also hurt because of her healing powers, and if he cures Mary, it'll kill her. Ignoring the danger, Connor takes Nia to the hospital. But when he sees how much pain she's in, he stops the treatment, letting Mary die naturally. Later, Park and Davis find Marcus's body. Connor makes sure Nia gets away safely, then turns himself into the cops and goes to jail. After that, the government bans using powers in the city to try to stop the chaos they cause. 5 years later, Tarek tries to help his sister Pavina go to school by selling psych for Garrett. But when Tarek asks for more money, Garrett says no. At a presentation by Sergeant Kingston, Garrett learns about new K9 units meant to deal with aggressive Guardians. Meanwhile, Pavina sees the robotic dog at the presentation and shows her own powers. Later, Tarek steals some bribe money meant for Kingston. When Kingston shows up, Tarek hides using his powers, but gets caught when he tries to run away. At the same time, Pavina realizes Tarek hasn't come home and goes looking for him. Police send a K9 unit to track Tarek, leading to a scary chase. Tarek hides in an old building, camouflaging himself to look like a pile of cloth. Luckily, the K9 can't tell it's him and leaves, letting Tarek run away. But when he gets close to home, the K9 finds him again. Scared, Tarek gives up, but the cops order the K9 to give him a lethal injection that stops powers. Tarek dies in pain just as Pavina shows up and sees it all. She cries for her brother, and the K9 notices her, but then everything goes black as she screams. The next morning at the police station, Kingston watches footage of the broken K9, confused about what happened. His only clue is a glimpse of a young girl in the footage's last moments. Cops go out to find her. Meanwhile, Connor, out of jail recently, works as a janitor at the community center, avoiding using his powers. While taking out trash, he finds a broken lock on a shed. Inside, he meets a scared Pavina who throws garbage at him at first. Connor soothes her nerves and guides her indoors, where his boss, Mina, provides solace and empowers her to open up. When a cop shows up, Mina distracts him, so Connor and Pavina sneak out the back. But more cops block them, so they have to find another way, accidentally getting caught on a security camera. They hide in Connor's apartment and see on the news that Tarek's death is called an overdose, not the truth. Pavina gets mad and messes up the TV with her powers, but Connor stops her. While they argue, Pavina hears police radio and knows they're coming. Soon, cops and a K9 unit bust into the building, but Connor and Pavina aren't there. They're in another unit, trying to run, but two Guardians show up from a drone and stop them. Connor uses his powers to take down one Guardian, but it tires him out since he hasn't used them in a while. The drone tells them they're under arrest, so Pavina messes up its systems with her powers, letting them get away. Realizing they're in danger, Connor asks Garrett for help, reminding him of a favor owed. He asks for new IDs, money, and a safe place for a friend. But Garrett knows about Pavina and their fight with the cops, revealing a secret deal with Kingston where the gang stays safe if they pay up. Connor uses this deal to protect the community and make sure people who help get treated fairly, so the cops leave them alone. He agrees to make fake papers, but insists on erasing Pavina's memory to keep the cops off their trail. At first, Pavina doesn't want to erase her memories, but she eventually agrees when she realizes how serious their situation is. They find a woman who can do it, and when she touches Pavina, her eyes go dark, showing she's messing with Pavina's memories. The woman is supposed to just erase the memory of Tarek's death, but she starts erasing all memories of him. Pavina gets mad, and Connor tries to stop it, but the gang stops him, saying they have to erase everything to stay safe. Pavina refuses to forget her brother and fights the woman trying to erase her memories. Meanwhile, a gang member with fire powers attacks Connor, but he uses his powers to turn the attack into water, which shocks everyone and knocks them out. After that, Connor and Pavina go to Mina for help. She offers to drive them away, but the cops notice her car's plate and chase her. They get stuck under a bridge, and Garrett's gang shows up, breaking the car windows and dragging them out. Two Guardians film it all, and Garrett, ordered to kill Pavina, can't do it when Connor gets in the way. But then the Guardians start shooting, and Garrett gets hurt. Mina gets hit too, but she pulls out the bullet like it's nothing because of her tough skin. Another gang member tries to help, but gets killed by the gunfire. Garrett takes a mirror from the car, but unfortunately, a gunshot shatters it. Garrett asks Connor and Pavina to join forces to survive, and they agree. Mina distracts the cops so they can escape in Garrett's car while bullets fly everywhere. Mina gets hit a lot, but Kingston shows up and offers to help her if she talks. Mina refuses and spits at Kingston before dying. At an old orphanage where Garrett grew up, they take a break. Connor helps Garrett get the bullet out of his chest with his powers. They talk about running to the border, but Pavina doesn't want to keep running forever. The next morning, they meet Davis, who grimly acknowledges Kingston's significant power within the force. Pavina suggests using her abilities to uncover the widespread corruption by accessing recorded evidence, which requires obtaining one of the K9 units. Remembering Kingston's ownership of a robot dog, Davis outlines a plan to sneak into his home and secure the crucial evidence. Shortly after, Garrett and Connor arrive at Kingston's house, pretending to be police union representatives, offering support to the sergeant. Stephanie, unaware of her husband's illegal activities, warmly welcomes them. From the car, Pavina watches Kingston putting his K9 unit in the garage when he arrives. Realizing the danger inside, Kingston remains composed in Stephanie's presence, chatting amiably with the visitors. Meanwhile, Pavina uses her powers to enter the garage and interact with the K9 unit, activating it and alerting the police IT personnel, who try to warn Kingston over the phone. With subtle telekinetic manipulation, Garrett prevents Kingston from answering the call by moving a nearby knife. When Stephanie answers the house phone, Connor takes the chance to excuse himself to the bathroom. Left alone, Kingston reveals his own telekinetic abilities, hurling a knife at Garrett, who effortlessly deflects it. A showdown between Garrett and Kingston unfolds, with Garrett winning because Kingston hasn't practiced his skills lately. In the garage, Connor helps a nervous Pavina focus her powers to get the info they need. Stephanie interrupts with an urgent message about their dog, so Garrett smoothly leaves to keep up appearances. After discovering the missing K9, Kingston orders a search. The trio escapes with the robot, and Pavina confirms she can access the recordings. Garrett leads them to what's supposed to be a safe apartment with a working computer, but they find hostile gang members there instead, revealing Garrett's betrayal. In anger, Connor tries to fight Garrett, but is overpowered. Garrett's real plan is to use the info to control Kingston and the neighborhood. He breaks the K9's head and gives it to a gang member for safekeeping. When Kingston and his men arrive, Garrett threatens to expose them unless his friends are left alone. But Kingston stabs Garrett and arrests him and sends another K9 into the building with his men. Inside, they see reporters outside, so Pavina suggests going ahead with her plan. Connor convinces the gang member to give up the robot's head. As a K9 bursts through the door, Connor tries to use his powers against the officers, but their shields absorb the attack. A fierce firefight breaks out as Connor and Pavina run, while the gang members fight back with their own powers like telekinesis and fire. Despite their efforts, the K9 quickly puts out the flames, and the cops keep coming, leading to a chaotic and intense fight. Using their powers and working together, they begin taking out the police officers one by one. Inadvertently, a man attacks Kingston with his super strength, but the sergeant stops him with his own powers and shoots him dead. Meanwhile, Connor and Pavina face a K9 in the corridor. Despite Connor's electric attacks, the robot keeps going and tackles him to inject the lethal poison. To fight back against the K9, Connor unleashes all his power, causing a blackout. When emergency lights come on, Connor thinks he's won because the K9 seems frozen. But then, to his horror, the robot starts moving again and continues injecting him. As the poison starts to take effect, Pavina focuses and takes control of the robot, making it stop the attack. Even though Connor survives, he's still weak from the poison. When the IT personnel show up with another K9, Pavina sends the first one to fight, quickly defeating the new one. The terrified officer tries to shoot, but the K9 stops him, cutting off his fingers to disarm him. Once Connor gets back on his feet, he sees Pavina got hurt by a stray bullet. More officers start overpowering the gang members inside. Connor carries Pavina outside, but he's too weak to keep going, so he has to lay her down. When he sees reporters nearby, he calls them over. Despite the police trying to bring in another K9, Garrett uses his telekinetic powers to disable it, turning it into a useless ball of metal. Then, Davis shows up and tells the officers to back off, letting the reporters come to Connor and Pavina. Pavina touches both the robot head and the camera, starting a broadcast exposing Kingston's corruption to the whole country. Back home, Stephanie learns the truth about her husband and is shocked. Kingston exits the building, trying to shoot Pavina, but Garrett intervenes, controlling Kingston's hand and holding him at gunpoint. This distraction lets Davis come in and arrest Kingston. With their mission done, Connor and Pavina collapse from exhaustion. 3 months later, Kingston is being investigated, and reporters dig deeper into the corruption, uncovering higher levels of power. Garrett is in jail, watching the news coverage calmly. Meanwhile, Connor goes back to his janitorial job and reopens the youth center for the neighborhood kids, including a recovered Pavina who thanks him for his constant support.